and every single one of them was tap dancing. Just picture it. Elephants in tutus and tap shoes, tiptoeing around trying to blend in while I tried to make sense of it all. When it comes to psychic phenomena and the supernatural, there's always at least one elephant in the room. And if you've been around the psychic scene for as many years as I have, you know exactly what I mean. When I first started out on my own psychic awakening journey, it didn't feel like there was just one elephant. It felt like a whole herd. It also felt a lot like trying to eat an elephant with a tiny teaspoon, to be honest. And in time, I realized that I wasn't the only one confused, because the truth is, many people have a lot of preconceived ideas about psychics, mainly thanks to pop culture. Welcome to The Sensible Psychic, the podcast edition. I'm your proudly psychic host, Anthon St. Martin. And yes, even if this is only episode 2, we might, just maybe, possibly already be ruffling some auras and asking our first couple of tap dancing elephants in the room to kindly take a seat. But that's exactly what this podcast is about. In this show, we don't tap dance around the truth or never give a straight answer on anything. Instead, we are cutting through the stereotypes, the myths, and the cheesy crystal ball clichés, and asking the real questions like, what is a psychic really? The word psychic is widely used but often misunderstood. Most dictionary and encyclopedia definitions, for example, are overly simplistic and lack accurate information, offering a limited perspective. These definitions tend to oversimplify psychic ability, reducing it to stereotypes such as the ability to foretell the future, talk to dead people, or have strange mental powers. These definitions are inadequate and distort the true nature of authentic psychic ability. So when people hear the word psychic, so many different ideas and assumptions may come up. Maybe you picture someone ominously holding up a tarot card called Death, or worse, the Devil, or perhaps it's the usual fortune teller peering dramatically into a crystal ball, or maybe it's Whoopi Goldberg in Ghost, that unforgettable scene where she looks at Demi Moore wide-eyed and whispers,
"Molly, you in danger, girl."
Or maybe you prefer Emma Thompson as Professor Trelawney in Harry Potter, peering through those giant casserole dish spectacles, squinting into a teacup, and solemnly declaring some poor student's untimely doom. Entertaining? Absolutely. Accurate? Not even close. Pop culture has had a field day with psychics. But here's the truth. Those clichés and stereotypes have very little to do with the real psychic experience. At its core, being psychic means having an unusual perceptual ability, a mental faculty that lets you become consciously aware of information that is otherwise normally unconscious. The word psychic originally comes from the Greek root meaning of the mind, soul, or spirit. So in essence, being psychic means you have an unusual mental faculty to consciously perceive what the soul or spirit already knows. In essence, there are 3 streams of mental awareness or consciousness that we all have going on all the time. First, there's the physical awareness of the body, basically everything you sense, through the 5 senses of touch, taste, sight, sound, and smell. Then there's the cognitive awareness of the brain in the waking state of ordinary consciousness, all the thinking, analyzing, problem-solving, and decision making we do every day, as well as our feelings and mood states, etc. And then, beyond that, there's a third stream of consciousness, namely, everything our soul or spirit perceives and experiences, but bits of it is just below waking awareness. In other words, subconscious, while most of it is entirely unconscious or hidden. This mind-soul awareness is non-physical. In other words, it is metaphysical or spiritual. So, it's not tied to the senses, and it is not limited to your physical body or your immediate surroundings. It is not limited by time, place, or distance. Think of it like the spiritual operating system quietly running in the background of your life. It's constantly processing energy data or metaphysical info from your higher self, from the spirit realm, from the universal consciousness, from spirit and the divine. It is from beyond the here and now, however you choose to label it for yourself, or how you see it based on your chosen belief system or faith. So for most people, most of the time, that third process of soul perception stays unconscious or hidden. It only slips through in rare moments. A moment of déjà vu, a lucid dream, an uncanny intuitive nudge or gut feeling, or even catching a glimpse of a deceased loved one in a crowd of people. But people with psychic ability are somehow a little differently wired, which enables them to consciously perceive more of that unconscious underlying soul information that most people seldom, if ever, realize is there. Psychics are able to consciously tune into more of that stream of soul awareness and consciously perceive and work with that information. Of course, that always brings up the next question, and that is, if that is the case, then why is it so that some people are wired that way and some are not? Well, the truth is, nobody really knows for sure. And it's kind of difficult to scientifically figure out exactly why, if a lot of the people who are supposed to find these things out don't actually believe it's real, and much less want to spend any research money on it. But there are many sensible theories and views about it that helps to make some sense of it, and even some actual research findings that give us clues as to why some people have this unusual ability, this psychic wiring, so to speak. And we'll definitely explore that in future episodes of this podcast. But in summary, there isn't one simple explanation or reason, and it's something we don't fully understand yet. That's part of why so much myth and misinformation exists around it in the first place. A good way to get a sensible understanding of it is to think of it in the same way as other unusual abilities, or gifts, or talents people sometimes have. Take music, for example. Some people can just sit down at a piano and play a song by ear, no lessons, no training, no music theory. They just have to hear it once, and somehow they can play it. In fact, scientists have studied this unusual musical ability. It is apparently linked to what is known as having perfect pitch. Studies suggest that only about 1 in 10,000 people in the general population have perfect pitch. That's only 0.01% of people. This, by the way, reminds me of a very similar finding in psychic research. In her analysis of the US government's Stargate project, a program that studied psychic phenomena from the late 70s through the mid-90s, statistician Dr. Jessica Utz reported that the project's large-scale screening experiments found only about 1% of volunteers who applied to take part in the program consistently performed well in remote viewing tests. Just 1%. She also pointed out that this talent didn't seem to be something you could simply train into someone, because the scientists did try that. But despite their best efforts, in the end, the program's most successful remote viewers were the ones who already appeared to have a natural gift for it when they showed up on the first day. Or think about artistic ability. Some people can pick up a pencil or even a box of crayons and create stunningly realistic images, almost as if they'd been trained by a master artist. Meanwhile, the rest of us can barely manage stick figures. Nobody taught these people these skills. It's just something that flows through them naturally. Psychic ability is just like that. For some people, it's simply an innate gift or an ability they're born with. And that's one of the most important things to understand about what it really means to be psychic. Psychic perception is an atypical form of cognition, an alternative way of perceiving and processing information that happens somewhere in that inner space between mind and soul. The original Greek word meant of the soul or of the mind. And that's exactly what true psychic perception is. It's both mental and metaphysical at the same time. When you're psychic, you don't just think differently. You perceive differently. It's not about logic, deduction, or common sense. It's about mental impressions, flashes of awareness, fragments of what is otherwise unconscious, breaking through into conscious awareness. Most of all, it is much more than mere intuition. So, what does this look like in practice? Well, when I channel for a client, I perceive various mental impressions. But I don't read their mind. I'm not rifling through their private mental drawers or spying on their deepest secrets. That's a very common misconception. And frankly, a very intimidating idea for a lot of people. Here's a simple exercise you can try with me right now to get a feel for what these psychic impressions or perceptions are actually like. Let's take clairvoyance, for example, which is psychic seeing or psychic vision. It's not all that different from how you might experience a memory from your life. So close your eyes and think back to one of the happiest or most joyful moments in your life. Picture where you were, who you were with, what you were doing, how you were feeling. Notice how it plays almost like a movie clip in your mind. Clear, vivid, detailed. And if you are really paying attention and truly getting into it, you even feel an emotional reaction or a physical sensation in your body. That's pretty much how I experience clairvoyant, clairempathic, and clairsomatic psychic impressions. Wait, what did he just say? Clair. And what? Don't worry, we'll talk about what those mean in future episodes. Or, if you don't want to wait that long, you can buy my book or sign up for my course. And by the way, since we are taking on tap dancing elephants, do you notice how what you just experienced is very different from some of the things you may have read online or even heard people say in blogs and podcasts about clairvoyance? I have seen over the years psychic perception described in very exaggerated ways. For example, I remember someone describing it like this. It's as if I have a blank screen in my head, like a whiteboard in a classroom. I have to pull it down, and then suddenly a movie of your life starts playing on it. And have you ever heard somebody saying that they see cloudy, smoky scenes and symbols rise up or take shape inside their crystal ball? Trust me, I have heard that more than once. Descriptions like that always make me smile because they remind me of one of my favorite cartoons. A very bored fortune teller smoking a cigarette and staring into a crystal ball. Not at visions of the future, but at Netflix. Let's just call it clairvoyance and chill. Now, let's take clairaudience as another example, or psychic hearing. A simple way to get a reasonable sense of what clairaudience psychics and mediums perceive is to think of it as being much the same as when an annoying song gets stuck in your head. You know the kind. Something like the Macarena or Gangnam Style or Gwen Stefani's Holla Back Girl back in the day. And let us not forget We Built This City and Agadoo Doo Doo from the 80s that just about everyone was singing at the time. You're not actually hearing it with your ears, but it's looping in your mind, right? Or when you try to recall the lyrics to a song and you can almost hear the words in your mind's ear. That's very similar to a clairaudient impression. Not a real voice in your ear, but an inner sound or words in the mind. In fact, I often hear songs in channeling sessions, and it always holds a very special and specific meaning for the client. However, there are also rare supernatural phenomena of external auditory or visual experiences, but that's a whole different conversation. For example, I don't just hear songs when I have clairaudient impressions. I also hear what one might call voices or spoken words. And those impressions are kind of interesting because they sound like electronic voice phenomena that you often hear recordings of with paranormal investigations. But more about that at another time. Another important point, psychics don't know everything. Thankfully not. We don't walk around with a constant stream of everyone's life story running through our minds. Imagine how exhausting that would be. And let's clear this one up once and for all. Psychic predictions are not absolute. The future is not set in stone. What I perceive in a reading is a trajectory, a potential outcome based on where someone is right now, their choices, their energy, their path. But change the choices and the outcome can shift. That's actually the empowering part of psychic work. It's not about fatalism. It's about helping people make better decisions. But more about this in a future episode. And if we're talking about mediumship, no, we don't summon spirits like party tricks. A medium offers the space, the openness, the willingness to serve as a channel or conduit, but who comes through is ultimately up to spirit. It's not like ordering food from a drive-through menu. Now, another question I get all the time is everyone psychic? In my experience, no, not in the way people often think. Everyone is intuitive, yes. Everyone has some level of spiritual awareness, to some degree, yes. But not everyone has the innate perceptual or mental wiring that makes them psychic. In the same way, not everyone can sit down at a piano and play music by ear, or pick up a pencil and draw like a Da Vinci. Some people just have that kind of wiring, and it's just simply how they are built. I guess in the end, we are all just built in different ways for different things. So, here is something you won't often hear on a psychic podcast. But here you will. Ready? Here goes. There's a strong case for psychic ability having a hereditary component. When you ask them, many practicing psychics and mediums will tell you they have family members who share similar abilities. Oddly, it often seems to skip a generation. By the way, it is also especially strong among twins, which suggests there is definitely some sort of genetic component to it. And this is not just my opinion either, because there's actually a growing body of scientific evidence suggesting genetic, psychological, and personality traits that are common among people with genuine psychic ability. Not just those who say they're psychic, but those who consistently perform well in actual controlled psychic experiments and psychic performance tasks. Wait a minute. Is it my imagination, or did I just see another elephant leave the room? Tap shoes and all? Anyway, the whole "are psychics born or made" debate is another rabbit hole for another time. I'll explore psychic heredity further in a future episode. However, if you're serious about finding out how psychic you truly are, and you want to dive into the research and evidence behind it, that's exactly what I cover in the first module of my Psychic Development Program. So, if these things spark more than just your everyday curiosity and are serious business to you, you're welcome to explore it further with me there. With that said, at the end of the day, if you want to know whether you're psychic or not, my simple answer is this. Most people who are psychic usually know they're psychic, or at the very least they suspect it, and they often know this from an early age. Now, sometimes when I say this, people react by saying something like, "Oh, but what about so-and-so who didn't realize they were psychic until after a car accident, or after they had their ayahuasca experience, or after their brain injury, or some other life-changing occurrence?" Here's the truth. It wasn't the accident, trauma, or the psychedelic substance that made them psychic or turned them psychic. That experience or event simply woke them up to something that was already there. Think of it this way. You won't know someone can play music by ear if they've never been near an instrument. But the first time you sit them at a piano and play them a song, suddenly the gift becomes obvious. It's like turning on the radio for the first time for someone who has that natural, perfect pitch musical ability. It was always in them. They just needed the right trigger to bring it forward. The awakening of psychic potential works much the same way. Yes, some people only awaken to it after trauma, illness, near-death experiences, and so on. Sometimes it takes a dramatic event to flip the switch. And we'll explore those kinds of awakenings more in a future episode. Heredity is also not the entire psychic origin story. Life experiences, upbringing, and various other external influences also play a role. So, like many other gifts or talents or aptitudes, music, art, mathematics, athleticism, the same applies to psychic ability, which after all is said and done, appears to be a combination of nature and nurture. You need the innate predisposition, but it also needs to be recognized or somehow activated, and ideally further harnessed, developed, and practiced. Because as we all know, you get better at something the more you actually do it. And here's another important quick fact that is bound to free you from another elephant in your psychic dance studio. Being psychic doesn't make anyone better, or more special, more evolved, or spiritually superior. That kind of hierarchy is pure human invention. In spirit, there is no pecking order that celebrates master channelers or psychic gurus. Psychic ability is simply an ability or talent. For some of us, it is also a calling. Why only for some, you may wonder? I guess maybe not everyone who has a talent or ability always makes the most of it, for various reasons. I, however, believe it to be a job some souls take on in this lifetime, just like others take on being healers, scientists, artists, or leaders. So, what is a psychic really? A psychic is someone with an exceptional or an unusual perceptual faculty for metaphysical cognition, which makes it possible for them to consciously perceive or become aware of information that somehow transcends sensory perception and ordinary cognition. And there you have it. Now you know everything. Until next time, dear seeker, believer, or secret skeptical stalker, stay sensible, stay centered, and stay proudly psychic.